But if you're looking for that sort of indescribable feeling of Call Me By Your Name, of like living a simple life and enjoying summer and enjoying what nature and time gives you, this might be one of the books I would recommend the most to someone if they love Call Me By Your Name. I don't know what Andrew Asman put in Call Me By Your Name to make it such a perfect read, but for me, this is the epitome of a perfect summer book. The way that the slow Italian summer is such an active force in this book, like you just feel the warm sun on your skin while you're reading this. The atmosphere is so in there, and I have never managed to find another book that so perfectly captures the feeling of an Italian summer, or just a summer holiday in general, where you can be so careless and slow and just have fun and read by the pool. This one just does it best. Another thing I love about this book is how it captures the feeling of being a certain age, like in your teens, experiencing your first love, your first desire. It's very much a story of queer awakening, but also just growing up and finding yourself in other people. And I think this book is one of the best examples of how it feels to be completely infatuated with someone else, to have that obsession inside yourself that you can barely think about anyone or anything else. Like it's all you care about, and you literally hurt other people in your life just because you are so obsessed with this love. Like I think everyone who's ever been in love knows this feeling that that is all that matters in the world. And this just describes it so well, because you're in Elio's head throughout the book, and like he gets obsessive and he has some crazy thoughts, but everyone is a little crazy when they have their first love. So in that sense, this book is also very realistic to me, but with a little filter of nostalgia and melancholia and longing over it. It almost feels like a memory of something rather than an actual event happening. And yeah, I could go on and on about how much I love this book. Ever since I read this first and first saw the movie, it just gave me a high that I've been chasing ever since. So in the years after, I've been slowly trying to find books that give me a similar feeling to Call Me By Your Name. And I've managed to collect quite a pile. And of course, they're not going to be exactly the same, but these are the books that I've found so far that have come closest in one or more elements of this book. So today I want to go through them with you and give you a perfect melancholy languid summer reading list. I've divided this video into categories so you can pick yourself which element of Call Me By Your Name you love the most and want to pick a book based on that. So the first category I have is so let's start with Lie With Me. I'm actually seeing now that Andrew Asman put a review on the cover of this book. I never noticed that before. He said it's stunning and heart-gripping, and I agree. This one tells the story of Philip, and he starts out as a grown man in the story, and then he looks back on his teenage years where he had a very formative first queer love, and he describes that story. So he grew up in the French countryside in a very small town, and there he fell in love with Thomas, and they started a secret love affair. And there's a few themes in this story that are very different from Call Me By Your Name, because there's very much a class divide that heightens the stake for these boys. There's a lot more secrecy and shame involved than in Call Me By Your Name, but it does have that element of coming of age, growing up, having your first love, having your first experiences with desire. And the writing is a little bit more restrained than in Call Me By Your Name. It's a bit more simple and quiet, but it's really devastating. I think I might almost like the writing in Lie With Me more than in Call Me By Your Name, just in terms of how it talks about certain feelings and emotions. And the best way to compare this to Call Me By Your Name is that if Call Me By Your Name is the description of the event as it is happening, this is looking back on the memory of it. That's really how this book feels. I already talked about this book in my previous video, but just in case you didn't see that, you know I love the writing in a book. If it has so many sections underlined, then I really know that the writing was banger. Then we have Swimming in the Dark by Tomas Jadrowski. Again, the elements that are similar to Call Me By Your Name are the coming of age element, first queer awakening, first love, but this book has an added element of political tension and sort of inevitable separation based on different political beliefs, because this is set in 1980s Poland when there's a lot of political unrest, a lot of dividends, a lot of corruption, and it follows Ludwig, who is attending university, and for summer he is forced to go on an agricultural summer camp, and there he meets Janusz, and on this summer camp they fall in love and spend like a perfect summer together, and they very much connect based on their intellectual level. There's a lot of talk about like books and culture and politics, and they connect based on that. But of course, there's also a lot of secrecy involved. It was not okay to be gay in that time, so it's very much a secret love affair. And then after that, they have to get back to Warsaw, and they are thrust again in this political situation, and there they get pulled apart. So there's definitely an added layer. There's definitely a lot more like pressure from the outside in this story than in Call Me by Your Name, where it's very much like an isolated bubble. So it's not as dreamy as Call Me by Your Name, but still, because they meet in this summer at the summer camp, it does have those elements a lot. And again, if you loved Call Me by Your Name the most for having that experience of first love, growing up, coming of age, then you might also really like this book. Then we have Open Heaven by Sean Hewitt. I actually very recently finished this, like 2 weeks ago. And I think in terms of tone, this one comes the closest to Call Me by Your Name. Not so much in plot and atmosphere, but in tone and like the voice of the main character, this comes very close, because this is also very much about discovering desire for the first time and just being so overwhelmed by it and not knowing what to do with it or where to put it. This main character honestly spirals almost into insanity because he desires someone so much, he just doesn't know what to do with himself. And this follows James. He grows up in a very small Irish town, and he has already come out as gay, which gives a sense of relief, but also a sense of deep isolation, because no one really wants anything to do with him anymore, because it's a very small, judgmental, rural town. His parents are trying to be supportive, but they also don't really know how to talk to him anymore. He doesn't have any friends. And then this boy, Luke, moves to town for 1 year, and James becomes completely obsessed with him. And one thing I struggle with a little bit in this book is that there's nothing much that he bases this obsession on. He just sees Luke and he's like a new face, and he's like, I'm gonna project all my pent-up desire onto you. And Luke doesn't give him a lot of signals to warrant that. So I was a little bit like, it doesn't really make sense, but then also your first love doesn't really make a lot of sense when you're in your teens and you're just like full of hormones in general. So maybe in that sense it is super realistic, but yeah, I missed a little bit of that romantic element in here. It's very much more about the obsession that you can have with someone and the identity you project onto someone just because you love them. But I feel like in Call Me by Your Name, Elio also does that a lot at the start when he's just in his thoughts, just thinking about Oliver nonstop. So this captures that tone very well. But I have to say that this one was a bit more intense. There's not a lot of relief in this book from the obsessive thoughts. Before we go into the next category, I just want to draw some attention to the cute little handwritten letters I've put on the screen, because I am very proud of them and very proud that I managed to do that. And I learned how to do that because I took some Procreate classes with Skillshare, and Skillshare is the sponsor of today's video, so I want to tell you a little bit more about them in the next clips. Okay, so I have had an iPad for years and never really took the time to figure out how to actually use Procreate, so I thought it was finally time. And safe to say that when I took this Skillshare class by illustrator Brooke Glazer, I was mind blown by everything you can do with this app. I was genuinely having so much fun just figuring everything out, listening along and trying everything as we went. And now I am more excited than ever to use Procreate and actually try my hand at illustrating. The course is super extensive, and I honestly would have paid good money for this course on its own. But luckily with Skillshare, I have access to their complete database of classes on a variety of topics by experienced teachers. Think product design, writing, gardening, and so much more. So if this summer you also want to learn something new and expand your skills, which I highly recommend, I have a gift for you. If you scan this QR code or go to the link in my description, you can be one of the first 500 people to get 1 month Skillshare for free. And I promise you, learning something new has never been so easy. Okay, the next category of books I want to talk about is the Italian atmosphere. If that is the element you love the most of Call Me by Your Name, then I have some book recommendations for you that might scratch that itch. Let's start with this one. Last Summer in the City follows a young man who lives in Rome. His name is Leo Cazzara. He's in his 30s and he's completely lost. He's very much drifting, and he's just spends his days in summer in an alcoholic haze, staying at friends' houses. They have parties. They talk about like arts and culture. So it's very much this romanticized idea of like the bohemian life in a big city in summer. But he is heavily depressed. So it's not all La Dolce Vita, there's very much a tragic undertone to it. And I would say that this connects to Call Me By Your Name just because it's a summer in Italy, but also because it very much feels like it could be Elio's future. Like if Call Me By Your Name is Elio's careless youth where he's really coming of age, then this is the aftermath of the love he experienced and the sort of loneliness that intellectuals can feel at certain points in their life. This is like the possible empty suburban future Elio could have, because it does very much feel like that. And I don't know if you know this, but there is a sequel to Call Me By Your Name. I forgot the name because I got rid of that book. It was really bad. I don't know what Andrew Esselman was thinking, but I hated every second of that. But it did kind of feel like this book, just worse. Like, if you want to read a sequel to Call Me By Your Name and just make up your own story, then I would say this one would work better for that than the actual sequel. I will put the title of it on screen, I really forgot. So yeah, this is really the depressing older brother of Elio. Like, this is what happens if you grow up as an intellectual in Italy and don't know what to do with your life. It is really tragic. So there's also some trigger warnings for this as well. Then we have The Gentleman from Peru by Andrea Esselman. I have to preface this with a warning that this book was not amazing. I don't know what Andrea Esselman did with Call Me By Your Name. I don't know if he's like a one-trick pony. That's very mean to say, but like any other book I've read by him just wasn't up there for me. And this one was very much the same. But if there's one thing he does very well is writing that summer atmosphere, that languid, slow, just warm, glowing, summery vibe. Like, he does it so well. And it's also definitely in this book. And this book follows a group of friends who are staying on the Amalfi Coast in Italy. And there they meet a like sort of mysterious older gentleman who's staying at the same hotel as them. And they sort of like include him into the group. And he starts telling them his story of a past love. In terms of plot, this left a lot to be desired. Like, the idea sounds really cool, but just in execution, it wasn't that great. It definitely was like a perfect summer read. It's not super romantic. This is also more about an obsessive love and projecting desires onto someone. It's also very much about like intellectual longing and intellectual curiosity. So that's an element I did enjoy about this book. But yeah, if you are just longing for that perfectly summery atmosphere of Call Me By Your Name, then this might be a book for you. Then we have The Beautiful Summer by Cesare Pavese. This one also has that Italian summer setting, this theme of youth and sensual awakening, first love, but it's also a lot darker again. Like, Call Me By Your Name is like golden and pure and romantic in a way, then this one is very much about the loss of innocence, being naive, and having like a rude wake-up call. So in that sense, this one is not romantic, but it does have that Italian summer atmosphere. It does have that coming of age element. It's the 1930s in Italy, and it follows Gina, who is a young girl. I don't know what her age is, 16. She's 16 years old, and she becomes friends with this older girl called Amelia, and she's very sophisticated. She's friends with a lot of artists and like in the bohemian crowd. So Gina sort of gets dragged into that friend group and circle, and there she falls in love with Guido, who is a painter, and they start a love affair. And it says, it's charged with false hope and overwhelming passion destined to last no longer than the course of a summer. So since Gina is so young, this is very much about the loss of innocence, being naive, and pretending you're older than you actually are. In that sense, it's a little bit like Call Me By Your Name, because Elio is also much younger than Oliver, I would say. Yeah, there's a lot of parallels, and I think this could scratch the itch if you're looking for something similar. And then lastly, I have two books for which I would call the category fleeting, life-changing connections, because I think if I explain what these books are about to you, you would think these have nothing to do with Call Me By Your Name at all. But the feeling these gave me were very similar. Like, I cannot really explain. It's just in terms of like atmosphere and energy in the book. But yeah, let me just tell you what they're about. I have The Offing by Benjamin Myers and The Lovers by Paolo Cognetti. The Offing is set after the Second World War. It takes place in England, and it follows Robert, who after he graduates decides to just go for a walk through the country, because after he graduates he needs to start working in the mines, just like his father does. But before he disappears into that life, he wants an adventure and wants to get to know himself. So he decides to start walking. And at some point during this trip, he comes along a little cottage by the coast. And there he meets Dulcie. She is this eccentric, sort of hermit, older woman who lives there all by herself. She has very strong opinions, and she decides that she's going to teach Robert about the world. She's like, you stay here, you can take care of my garden in return for you staying here. And she's gonna like teach him how to appreciate life. So he learns how to eat from the garden, and he learns how to appreciate food in a different way. He learns how to appreciate art and philosophy, and they have a lot of like deep conversations. So it's very much these two completely different worlds coming together, like this very sheltered boy who comes from this very rural town where everyone's just working in the mines, very focused on just that. And Dulcie is this woman who had a lot of experiences in like the art world, bohemian world. And yeah, just two very unlikely people to become friends, but they strike up this beautiful and intense friendship together. And then of course, after a while, Robert has to leave again. And the way this made me feel like Call Me By Your Name is just the very languid, relaxing, slow feeling of this one summer by the coast. It's very much about appreciation for small things, really using your senses, appreciating nature. Like that's something I really enjoyed about Call Me By Your Name, that they eat from like the garden and stuff. And it's very much rooted in nature and very in touch with just a simple life. And this felt exactly the same. And also it's similar in the sense that this friendship just over the course of one summer completely changes Robert as a person as he is growing up, which I think is also the case for Elio and Oliver. So there's a lot of similarities there, even though this is set in England and it's not a romantic story. I do think this might be one of the books I would recommend the most to someone if they love Call Me By Your Name. Like if you're looking for queer awakening, queer desire, longing, this is not the book for you. But if you're looking for that sort of indescribable feeling of Call Me By Your Name, of like living a simple life and enjoying summer and enjoying what nature and time gives you, the offing. Love this book. It's one of my favorites of all time. Then lastly, we have The Lovers by Paolo Cognetti. And this is not set in summer. It's actually set in deep winter in the Italian Alps. There's a lot of snow. There's a lot of ice. So it's not necessarily a perfect summer beach read, but it feels like one to me because it's so introspective and slow and simple and focused on the simple things. Like that's usually what I like to read in summer. So for me, this definitely feels like a summer read. I don't really know how to explain. Maybe for you, it's not the case at all. But yeah, I read this by the pool in Tuscany last year. You can also see it is completely water damaged and it worked for me. So this follows Fausto, who is taking a break from his really intense work life in Milan. He goes to the Italian Alps, to this small town called Fontana Fredda, and takes up a job there in the winter at a trattoria, which is like this small restaurant or refuge, like a place where people come together in the mountains, and works there. And there he meets Sylvia, who's also sort of like adrift, searching for something in the mountains, searching for a feeling. And they begin a romance together. And I would say it's a very like tender and careful romance between them, because they're both sort of holding back because they're looking for something there. They know whatever they're looking for, they cannot give it to each other. There's already sort of this melancholic realization that whatever they're looking for, it's not in each other, but they still feel drawn to each other because they both have this emptiness inside of them. I think that's the best way to describe it. So there's no intense, passionate love affair here. That's not the kind of love story this is. It's very much about the people you meet along the way while you're searching for yourself. And again, just the simplicity of living with nature, living with the seasons, being very rooted in time and in the days, very just in the moment and not rushing towards the future. That's the feeling this book gave me. I also just love learning more about life in the Alps because it's an area I live very close to, and I've always been fascinated by how people live there. Like, it's so isolated. So it was interesting to get like an inside view into that. But yeah, it is a winter book. Just want to warn you for that. But the atmosphere felt summery to me because it's very much about, yeah, just an introspective time in nature, finding yourself. So I think it still fits. Those were all the books I had for you today. I hope you will find a new favorite in there. If you have any other book categories or themes you want me to do recommendations for, definitely let me know in the comments because I'm always open to new ideas. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you again Skillshare for sponsoring this video. And don't forget you can use the QR code or the link in my description to get a 1-month free trial. And that's it. I will see you in the next video. Bye!